Next up, we've got Jeff Bandman, and he's going to be discussing global regulatory outlook for NFTs. So we're going to move into regulatory from legal and accounting.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to, first of all, praise the audience who stuck around through a long day for the legal and regulatory section. So I will give you a former regulator's musing on the current and former outlook for regulation around NFTs. Let's see. There we go. So a little bit about myself, what I'm currently doing, and then my background. Has anybody here heard of Punk 6529? So Punk 6529 is one of the leading influencers, thought leaders around NFTs. He's a colleague. We have a group of businesses that include an NFT museum, an open metaverse initiative, an NFT asset management business. I also previously had a consulting firm, Bandman Advisors. I'm a co-founder of GBBC Digital Finance. I do teaching work for the University of Nicosia, previously for Yale. I'm also advisor to a number of governments around the world on digital asset and blockchain issues, including ESMA, which is sort of like the European SEC, the EU Blockchain Libertarian Forum, which advises the European Commission, which is sort of the White House of Europe, also other authorities in Cyprus and Bermuda, for example. Previously, and this is why the former regulator part comes in, I was a senior official at the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, which is sort of the other major market regulator. Many people are familiar with the SEC. People often don't know the CFTC, but the SEC regulates capital formation. The CFTC regulates commodities and commodity derivatives, which are often used for risk hedging. But for example, Bitcoin futures and swaps or ETH futures and swaps would fall under the CFTC. I launched the CFTC's Innovation Hub. Previously, I spent my career in financial services in New York and London before going down the digital asset rabbit hole. I rebuilt and ran the Cantor Fitzgerald market data business after the events of 9/11. And in case anybody has trivia questions, I also was a successful Jeopardy contestant and spent my winnings backpacking around the world. Sadly, Bitcoin hadn't been invented yet, so I couldn't put all my winnings into crypto. Okay, good. So here are some of the, I'd say, kind of basic and fundamental questions that I think people either are asking or should be asking about the regulatory landscape. First, is an NFT a security? If it's not a security, is an NFT a commodity? Is it a commodity derivative? And then what other sort of regulatory questions should we be asking about? So I would say, in general, in most cases, I think NFTs should not be securities. They should not be considered securities. Now, having said that, I think it's possible to take something that is not a security and offer or sell it in a way or combine it with other selling efforts that does expose you to the risk of it being deemed to be a security. So people often talk about the Howey test. That's the US Supreme Court determination that the SEC applies in most cases to determine whether something is a security or an investment contract. The elements of the Howey case are, is it investment of money in a common enterprise with an expectation of profits from the efforts of others? So if I have an NFT that's a collectible, but then I create an investment vehicle, I fractionalize it, I combine it with some other activities, I could sort of take my NFT or set of NFTs and then go about the process of selling them in such a way that I do fall within the purview of securities laws. So you need to be careful of that. But in most cases, a typical NFT, it's just a digital asset, digital property rights, and should not be. But you can get yourself in a situation where it is. Another question is an NFT a commodity or is an NFT a commodity derivative? Commodity is actually a very broad term. One of my former CFTC colleagues said basically anything that's a noun is a commodity. Now, interestingly, now we have nouns now. So we actually do have nouns that are digital assets and digital commodities. The technical definition of a commodity for purposes of the CFTC under the Commodity Exchange Act, is it a commodity upon which a derivative could be based? That's a simplification. So obviously for fungible commodities, you could have an index or basket of them. For NFTs, which are by definition non-fungible, could you have a commodity derivative on something that is non-fungible? And I could sort of see how you could design it. For example, if you had a broad-based basket of floor fidenzas or floor punks or floor apes, you probably could derive some sort of broad-based index. So I could see things like that happening. But I think this discussion brings up something which is that people are used to sort of talking about financial regulation in the context of crypto, partly because initial crypto products were used for payments and came under money service transmitter things. But I think that there needs to be a realization, and I think that will gradually happen, is just because something is a digital asset does not mean it is a financial product. Not all digital assets can be or should or must be under financial regulation. And I think the time for one-size-fits-all regulation, we need to move beyond that. This is not a one-size-fits-all situation. So what are some of the other things we need to be asking? Well, first of all, the recent indictment of a former executive of OpenSea for insider trading, does that mean these things are securities? No. The actual indictment was for misappropriation and wire fraud, not insider trading. The headline the prosecutor used to gain attention to this conduct, which looked to me like very, very bad conduct if the allegations are true, seemed like reprehensible conduct, but legally he's not actually accused of insider trading under securities laws. Also, interestingly, this past weekend, the market for punks went up. Was there news on punks? Well, on Sunday, there was an announcement that a sort of product manager had been hired. So could there have been people who traded on that information to invest in punks? Or did people just think the floors had dropped too low? Not for me to say, but an interesting question. So what are some of the other things we should be thinking about or looking at in this area? Well, I think authorities are definitely looking at things like anti-money laundering and tax. So those are other forms of, let's say, governmental concern. And really in crypto, the regulation of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, AML and tax were some of the very first things they thought of. FinCEN put out guidance in 2012, 2013. The IRS put out a statement in 2014. Here's an example. In last November, Elliptic wrote about how crypto addresses holding NFTs have actually been sanctioned by OFAC, which is the body that, that is kind of puts people on the sanctions list. So now, you need to wonder, are the people you're buying or selling NFTs from, are they sanctioned wallet addresses? This is starting. There still haven't been too many, but, we can expect there to be more of those. And, the fine print says a digital ape, a domain address, and virtual land parcels were among the assets held by that wallet. Around the world, there are starting to be other developments or things that regulators and authorities are looking at. There was, there we go, a very interesting court case in the UK recently that determined that NFTs were, quote, property that you could actually go to court and assert your rights in, which I think is a very, very important development. This case involved two Boss Beauties, which was probably the first time Boss Beauties were written in a court case and the first time that the judge probably heard of what they were. But it's nice to know that you can go to court and get some rulings and enforce some of your rights in that area. So just a few things in terms of the road ahead. One, if anybody knows a good paralegal, I'm looking for one. I'd say in terms of the regulatory outlook in this area, so I think NFTs are definitely on regulators' radar screen. I think regulators are also and policymakers are coping with a lot. DeFi, stablecoins, the question of what is or is not a security in the U.S. I think the legislators are trying to figure out how to divvy up the landscape. In Europe, they're about to pass major legislation. I don't think NFTs are at the top of the priority list, but I think that there will be increasing attention given to them. With that, thank you very much. And
interesting point, because they certainly haven't crashed in value the way, and they certainly haven't crashed in value, and nobody's like, oh my God, I just lost $40 billion on an NFT.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. But, you know, hopefully people are into NFTs for the art and for the community. And I think fundamentally NFTs are about art and community as well. Thanks again, everyone.
Thank you.